My sister always said I'd never amount to anything because I didn't go to college. She laughed when I took a minimum wage job. 10 years later, she showed up at a luxury resort for her honeymoon and froze when she saw my name engraved on the building she was staying in with the words founder and CEO below it. My sister Sarah always had this way of looking at me like I was a disappointment waiting to happen, and honestly, growing up, it felt like she was probably right because she was the golden child who did everything by the book, straight A's from kindergarten through high school, full scholarship to a prestigious university, graduated summa cum laude with a degree in business administration, landed a corporate job right out of college making six figures, married a successful attorney, and had this picture-perfect life that my parents would parade around at every family gathering, while I was just the screw-up younger brother who barely graduated high school with a C average and had absolutely no interest in sitting in a classroom for 4 more years, listening to professors drone on about theories that felt completely disconnected from real life. The day I told my family I wasn't going to college, Sarah actually laughed, not a small chuckle, but a full-throated laugh that echoed through our parents' dining room, and she said with this condescending smile that still burns in my memory, "You're never going to amount to anything without a degree. You know that, right? You'll be flipping burgers or cleaning toilets for the rest of your life, while the rest of us actually make something of ourselves." My parents didn't laugh, but they didn't defend me either. They just sat there in this heavy, disappointed silence that somehow felt worse than Sarah's mockery. And my dad finally said, "Well, I hope you have a plan because we're not supporting you forever," which was his way of saying I was on my own. So at 18, I moved out with $300 in my pocket, a duffel bag of clothes, and absolutely no idea what I was doing. And I took the first job I could find, which was washing dishes at a resort about 2 hours from my hometown. Minimum wage, brutal hours, coming home every night with pruned fingers and aching feet and grease stains that wouldn't wash out of my clothes no matter how hard I scrubbed. Sarah found out about my job through my mom, and she actually drove to the resort one weekend with her college friends just to see me. And when I came out of the kitchen in my stained uniform, she made this big show of it, saying loud enough for everyone to hear, "Oh my God, there he is, my little brother the dishwasher. Isn't that adorable? Make sure you wash those plates really well." And her friends all giggled while I stood there feeling about 2 inches tall, but something in that moment crystallized for me, a kind of quiet fury that settled into my bones and became fuel. I started paying attention at that resort, really paying attention, not just to my job, but to everything. How the place operated, what guests complained about, what made them happy, where the resort made money and where it bled cash, and I noticed that the owner, this elderly man named Mr. Morrison, was basically running the place into the ground through neglect and outdated practices. I started staying after my shifts, volunteering to help with maintenance, learning about the booking systems, talking to guests to understand what they wanted, and Mr. Morrison noticed, started asking my opinion on things. And when I told him the resort needed to modernize its approach, focus on experiential luxury rather than just rooms and meals, create these Instagram-worthy moments that would market themselves, he actually listened. Within a year, I'd worked my way up to assistant manager, not through any degree or credential, but through pure obsessive dedication and vision. And Mr. Morrison started treating me like the son he never had, teaching me everything about the hospitality business, the good and the bad, the margins and the pitfalls. And when he was diagnosed with terminal cancer 2 years later, he did something that shocked everyone, including me. He offered to sell me the resort for a fraction of its value with a payment plan I could actually manage, saying I'd already put more heart into the place than anyone else ever had. I took out every loan I could, maxed out credit cards, lived in a storage room at the resort for 3 years eating ramen and whatever leftovers the kitchen didn't serve, and poured every single dollar back into transforming that aging property into something extraordinary. I renovated the rooms with local artisan furniture, installed a world-class spa, brought in a chef who'd trained in France, created these curated experience packages that combined adventure with luxury, and most importantly, I made every single guest feel like they were the only person who mattered during their stay, remembering names and preferences, and surprising them with personalized touches that turned first-time visitors into lifelong devotees. The resort started getting attention, first locally, then regionally, then nationally, featured in travel magazines and blogs, celebrities started coming, and the revenue exploded in ways I'd never imagined possible. But I didn't stop there because I'd learned that standing still in business is the same as moving backward. I took the profits and bought a second struggling property, then a third, then a fourth, each time applying the same formula of personalized luxury and experiential excellence. And within 7 years, I'd built a small empire of boutique resorts across the country, each one unique, but all sharing this philosophy that luxury isn't about gold-plated faucets and marble floors. It's about making people feel profoundly seen and cared for in ways they didn't even know they needed. During all this, I barely talked to my family. There were obligatory calls on holidays where Sarah would talk about her corporate promotions and her husband's cases and their new house in the suburbs, and my parents would ask me how the hotel thing was going with this tone that suggested they thought I was just barely scraping by. And I never corrected them, because honestly I was too busy building something real to care about their perception of me. Plus, there was something satisfying about being underestimated, about having people write you off while you're quietly changing your entire life trajectory. Then one day, about 10 years after I'd washed my first dish at that original resort, I was doing a site inspection at my newest and most luxurious property, a stunning beachfront resort that had cost $40 million to acquire and renovate, with infinity pools and private bungalows and a Michelin-starred restaurant. And I was in the lobby reviewing some plans with my general manager when I heard this familiar voice, that particular pitch and cadence that I'd know anywhere. And I looked up to see Sarah walking through the entrance with her husband, both of them in expensive vacation clothes with designer luggage, clearly here for some special occasion. She was talking to the front desk clerk about their honeymoon package, mentioning it was actually their 10-year anniversary, so they were doing a honeymoon redo at the most exclusive resort they could find. And the clerk was going through the check-in process when Sarah's eyes wandered to the wall behind the desk, where there was this massive piece of architectural art made from driftwood and metal, and embedded in it in elegant lettering was the resort's founding statement along with my full name and the words founder and CEO below it. I watched her face go through this incredible journey of emotions, confusion first, then recognition, then disbelief, then something that looked almost like physical pain, and she actually stumbled backward a step, grabbing her husband's arm and pointing at the wall with a shaking hand, and I heard her whisper, "That's my brother. That's my little brother who washed dishes. This can't be right. This has to be a different person with the same name." Her husband looked confused and was about to say something when I walked over, and I'll never forget the way her face went completely white when she realized it was really me, not in a stained dishwasher uniform, but in a tailored suit, confident and composed and very clearly in charge of this entire operation. "Sarah," I said calmly, "welcome to the resort. I hope you and your husband enjoy your stay and congratulations on 10 years of marriage." And she just stood there opening and closing her mouth like a fish out of water, unable to form words, while her husband looked between us trying to understand what was happening. The front desk clerk, sensing the weird tension, asked if there was a problem, and I smiled and said, "No problem at all, just a family member I haven't seen in a while. Please make sure they get upgraded to our best oceanfront bungalow with complimentary spa services and champagne, my treat." Because I'd learned that true success isn't about rubbing people's faces in your achievements, it's about being so secure in what you've built that you can afford to be gracious. Sarah finally found her voice and stammered something about not knowing I owned resorts, and I explained briefly about the decade of work, the vision, the growth, keeping it factual and unemotional, and she asked why I never told the family. And I said simply, "You never asked. And honestly, I was too busy building this to worry about managing your perception of me." Later that evening, she called my room, crying, apologizing for how she treated me, for the mockery and the condescension and the certainty that I'd fail, saying she was ashamed and didn't know how to process that her dishwasher brother had built something she could only dream of achieving in her corporate career. And I listened quietly and then told her something I'd learned over the years, that college isn't the only path to success, that sometimes the people who struggle and scrape and build from nothing have advantages that the privileged never develop, like resilience and resourcefulness and the ability to see opportunities where others see obstacles, and that I didn't hold any grudge because her doubt had actually fueled my determination in ways that support could never have had. We talked for 2 hours that night, really talked maybe for the first time in our lives, and something shifted between us, not back to how it was because you can't undo a decade of distance, but forward into something new and more honest. She stayed at the resort for her week, and I made sure she had the full experience, every detail perfect, every moment memorable, not to show off, but to show her what passion and dedication can build when you refuse to let other people's limitations define your possibilities. And on her last day, she hugged me in the lobby with tears in her eyes and said, "I'm sorry I never believed in you, but I'm incredibly proud of who you became anyway." And I realized that her approval, which I'd craved so desperately as a teenager, didn't actually matter anymore, because I'd built something real on my own terms, and the only belief that it ever truly mattered was my own.